Hello and welcome back to the Outdoor Minimalist podcast. I'm your host, Meg Carney, and I'm an outdoor and environmental writer and author of the book, Outdoor Minimalist, Waste Less Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking. Follow the link in the description to pre-order a copy of the book so you'll be the first to receive it on the release date of September 1st, 2022. The Outdoor Minimalist podcast has a goal to give listeners actionable ways to waste less hiking, camping, backpacking, and more during every step of their process. Your impact outdoors starts long before you hit the trail and goes beyond leave no trace ethics. You'll learn how to identify sustainable outdoor brands, how to ask hard questions regarding sustainability, and begin to shift and evolve your mindset to integrate minimalism into all of your outdoor pursuits. In episode 49 of the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, we are kind of building off of last week's episode. Now, both are standalone episodes, so you'll still get a lot from each one if you listen to them individually, but I do think that you'll likely get more out of this one if you have also listened to episode 48, Can a Company Be 100% Circular? So, in this episode, we are diving into the topic of sustainability transparency reports. These are essentially a yearly report card that a company puts out that overviews their environmental impact across the entire production and life cycle of a product, so from extraction to disposal. To help break down this a little bit more, I had the pleasure of chatting with Jordi Beneyto-Ferre, the Senior Manager of Global Materials and Sustainability at Icebreaker, a VF company. Jordi has 13 years of experience in sportswear development and innovation with global leading brands such as Puma, Adidas, and Icebreaker. Industrial engineer and industrial designer by trade, his vision for the apparel industry is to stop being part of the problem and to become an active part of the solution. He envisions a world where petrochemical synthetics are no longer needed because there are much better natural and renewable alternatives that can deliver the same or better functionality. He wants a world where every garment can be traced back all the way to the place where that fiber was grown and to the people who are part of the journey. Adventuring plans on your calendar? Remember to grab your Lava Linens travel towel on your way out the door. Founded by a mother-daughter team, Lava Linens crafts durable, luxurious travel towels as a more sustainable and better performing alternative to microfiber and cotton towels. Powered by flax and hemp, they're designed to be by your side for years to come. Use the code Outdoor Minimalist for 15% off your next order. Well, welcome to the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, Jordi. I am really stoked to have you here, and I am excited to dive into today's topic because it's not something that I know a ton about. But before we get to all of that, can you tell us a little bit more about just how you fell in love with the outdoors and how outdoor recreation fits into your day-to-day life?
Hi, Meg. Very nice to be here talking to you. And the outdoors has been sort of part of my life. I grew up in a small town in Spain where basically the outdoors was at my doorstep. There was nothing else outside of my doorstep than forests and mountains. So in a sense, we made it part of our lives in the beginning. And just growing up, I really got into hiking and mountain biking. So the aspect of, being out and going for a big adventure and sort of getting lost out there. So it's always been part of what I love. And now living in New Zealand, there's no better place to enjoy the outdoors. The whole country is a big outdoors wonder. So yeah, we're constantly out there camping, camper vanning, mountain biking, hiking. It's just too easy here in New Zealand and too good to not to do it.
And what brought you to New Zealand? Was it for work or you just really enjoyed that landscape?
Well, it was a bit of both. My wife is from Australia, so at the time we were living in Germany because of work. And coming back to the Southern Hemisphere was always in our radar. And when I got the opportunity and I started talking to Icebreaker, and then I realized they were based in New Zealand, I was like, oh, well, that's an easy choice, right? Just let's go, because I love the brand, what they were doing, and the targets that they had in mind were totally aligned with my passion and beliefs. And the fact that it was based here, it was just an extra plus, to make the decision easy.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. So just out of curiosity, have you always worked in the outdoor industry, like in product design and sustainability, or have you worked in other industries as well?
So I mainly worked in the sports apparel industry. So my two previous experiences before Icebreaker were in Puma and in Adidas. So they do have, of course, their outdoor section, but I was more focused on product innovation in those two companies. Now moving to Icebreaker, it was a bit like, okay, I really want to combine what I'm most passionate about, which is, outdoors and sustainability and making things that are responsibly made. It sort of ticked all the boxes of what I love doing. So yeah, it was a bit of a natural step for me to move towards an outdoors, sustainable, natural company type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And since we're on the topic of Icebreaker and your job, can you tell us what exactly you do for them and what Icebreaker is? So in case a listener hasn't heard of the company before, the products that you guys make.
Sure. So Icebreaker is an outdoors apparel company that was originally founded in New Zealand. And the aim of Icebreaker from the beginning has been to show that there is ways of making performance apparel with natural materials. This reliance on synthetics and on plastic, it's not a necessity per se. There is much better ways of doing this type of products from natural materials. And the focus that Icebreaker took from the beginning was starting with merino wool. It just so happens that merino wool is so good at doing so many things that we could really make a lot of amazing products out of it. And, we found the wool, we had really to secure the way we got that wool. And that sort of started the history of Icebreaker, in which we established long-term relationship with merino wool farmers here in New Zealand. And that just comes sort of the company and the brand build up from that relationship up. In what I do in Icebreaker, so I'm a bit of a jack of all trades in a sense. I'm in charge of seasonal material development. So all the materials that we develop season after season, that falls within my team's responsibility. Then I'm also in charge of sustainability strategy. So pushing all the initiatives to become better at what we do. I will touch base later, but sustainability is not sort of an on-the-side thing for Icebreaker. It's like a day-to-day top of mind for everyone in the company. I just so happen to have it in my title, right? And then I am also in charge of quality control. So in a sense, I am in charge of the inception of the materials, but I'm also in charge of making sure that they arrive to the consumer in the right level of quality and that nothing wrong happened along the process.
Wow, yeah, that is a lot of responsibility, but very important.
It is a bit.
So you did kind of mention just a minute ago that sustainability is really important, to the core values of Icebreaker. So was that always a part of the company values, or is that something that has evolved over time?
Well, I think the way Icebreaker was founded, was founded based on a sustainable idea, right? It was at the time, there was the eureka moment to say, hey, we could actually make outdoors apparel with merino fiber. And then as also how are we going to get that merino fiber? By establishing those strong relationships with our growers so we can ensure that we grow the fiber sustainably. So on that premise, and the fact that we had very specific requirements for the type of wool that we use, we had to create an extremely traceable and transparent supply chain. So we couldn't let go of any part of the process, because then we lost sight of our original, of the wool that we really want to use. So that sort of forces us to always, from the beginning, have this sustainable and traceable mindset, right? So we need to make sure that we can trace back the wool. We need to make sure that everything that happens to that wool until it becomes a garment, it's also traceable, and that we have an extremely visible outlook over everything that's happening. So yeah, it's part of the fabric of the company to be sustainable. It's part of what we do, and it's more work than not being sustainable, to be honest, because you have to control a lot more moving parts, but it's the right thing to do, and that's how we operate. I think there's no other way for us.
Yeah, I really appreciate the general transparency of Icebreaker. Seems to be above and beyond what I see in a lot of other apparel companies, just in general. And anytime that we talk about sustainability or greenwashing or anything in that realm, especially marketing purposes wise, the main thing that we speak on is the transparency of the supply chain and how things are being produced, and just the entire life cycle of a product. So I think that's really interesting. And the main reason, I guess, that we ended up connecting is because the Icebreaker Transparency Report for 2021-2022 just came out, I think, at the end of July. And these reports are something that I'm still kind of learning about, but I think that they are really interesting and helpful. And so what I'm looking for from you is to kind of explain what exactly a transparency report is and why they're useful and important for companies, specifically product developing companies.
Yeah, definitely. Super exciting that it just been released. It's not been an easy process to put together, but we're so excited that the way it came through, and I think the quality and the richness of the information, it's amazing. So in a sense, how we started writing this transparency report, it was a very simple question. I still remember the post-it on the wall that said, what if our consumer would see everything we do, right? What if we were a consumer, when they buy an Icebreaker product, they could go back and check, okay, where was this made, with what materials, and how can I feel good about the fact that I'm purchasing this product if I don't really understand everything about it, right? So that's where the transparency report comes about, is about showing consumers the guts of our company, how we do products, what are our principles, what are our beliefs, our values, and to ensure that, hopefully it aligns with their values as well, and they can therefore purchase Icebreaker with a clear conscience and feeling good about that act of consumption that I think lately is a bit evilized, right? If consumption is evilized, overconsumption and everything, it's true, but there is also responsible consumption, and that's where Icebreaker wants to be part of, right? That responsible consumption and giving the consumer as much information and as many knowledge and tools as possible so they can make the right choice at the end of the day. And that's what transparency reports, in my opinion, are for. More and more companies are doing it, and that's good. The more people does this type of reports, the more the consumer is informed and the better choices they can make.
Yeah, exactly. That intentional consumption, I think, should be more so where the type of zero waste minimalist movements are going, where you're reducing consumption, but we're humans and we're going to consume in a capitalist society. So let's be intentional about it.
Correct.
So within the Icebreaker report, without going through the whole thing, and I will link the report in the episode notes. So if people want to look at it after they're done listening or while they are listening, you can do that. But within your report, what are some general highlights that you can go through, or your primary focus areas?
Sure. So I think three main highlights come to mind. I'll try to put them in sort of a logical order, or at least they make sense in my head that way. So one of the big highlights always in our transparency report is talking about the Growers Club. And the Growers Club, they are long-term supply contracts that we have with a number of wool growers in New Zealand. So we have established a contract with them for 10 years in which we will keep buying wool from them for those 10 years, right? And that gives these guys the security to invest in their farms, and it also obviously gives us the safety of supply, so we can keep producing our products in the same quality and the same way. So one of the highlights, I think, is that we were at 55 growers last year based in the South Island of New Zealand, and this year we have grown that number to 70 growers, so an increase of 15 growers in 1 year is pretty good, and we want to keep extending those contracts more and more because we feel is the right way to do business with our growers and to give them that security for the future. They can keep investing in their farms, keep investing in education, keep investing in better practices, right? And as a consequence of that, having that Growers Club, the big highlight of the report is the launch of the ZQRX platform. The ZQRX platform is a regenerative agriculture index. So I guess to put it simply, those 70 growers have now committed to execute in their farms regenerative practices. So over the coming years, we can start to monitor the improvements in their land in terms of carbon sequestration, in terms of water health, in terms of soil health, in terms of biodiversity, and those different things. That at the end of the day, it's what's contributing to make the wool more sustainable and, eventually, hopefully, could become carbon neutral. Still some ways to go because this, we are with ZQRX, we are dealing with nature. We are making interventions to bring back nature to what it was before we started to use it quite intensively. So over time, we expect to see a lot of changes in those farms that with the ZQRX platform, we are going to give the farmers a tool to measure, right? So they are all those interventions that they're doing in their farms. Like we have a couple of examples in the transparency report from Omarama Station or from Ensklu Station. They're sort of going back to the roots. Instead of using cars, they're using horses, or they're stop using fertilizing, or they're introducing rotational grazing, things like that. Not only they are doing it now, but with ZQRX, they'll be able to measure and say, oh, because I did all these interventions, it so happens that I've reduced my emission by X amount. And therefore, they can benefit from that environmental improvement. And also, we can eventually at some stage say that the impact of growing our wool has been reduced over time. So that's one of the key highlights for the transparency report this year, and a massive milestone for us in Icebreaker to keep rolling out the implementation of ZQRX to more and more of our wool. And a third highlight for me, because I'm in charge of the material development and it's sort of like my day-to-day, is our progress in removing petrochemical synthetics from our fabrics. This is a strong target that we have internally to remove the use of this type of fibers and to use as much as natural or plant-based fibers as possible. So last year we were sitting at 91%, and this year I'm happy to report that we're at 95%. So we're going pretty hard at this, and we just gotta figure out that last 5%, and hopefully we've removed petrochemical synthetics altogether from our garments and fabrics.
Yeah, those are all really amazing accomplishments just within 1 year. And it's really cool that even though you are basically excelling a lot of other textile producers in the industry, that you're still pursuing better alternatives and kind of reinventing those aspects along the way too. So I don't want to take away from the Icebreaker transparency report specifically. So if you want to reference it kind of as we keep going, feel free to do that. But I do want to talk about reports in general, because you did mention earlier that they're becoming more common and there are other companies that do write them. But are transparency reports a standard in any industry? Textiles specifically would be one that I would be interested in hearing about.
So I don't know that they are a standard thing. I don't think there is no regulating body is going to come to you and saying, where is your transparency report, right? It is something that more and more companies are doing because they believe it's the right thing to do. And to me, that's a great step in the right direction. Like, the more transparency and the more companies provide transparency, the more accountability there is towards those companies. So clearly, in terms of the environmental situation, we are in a bit of a big problem, right? So everybody has to be doing something to fix it. This is no longer a choice, it's an absolute responsibility. We're all living in the same earth. We all have to do something to fix it, right? So I'm happy to see more and more reports coming through, and I'm happy to see that, what we believed 5 years ago was the right thing to do. It's more and more people are coming down that realization. This is down to transparency, and it is down to giving consumer the power to decide based on information that we can make choices. And hopefully the ones that are reporting and are giving transparency, they are the ones that are going to be rewarded by the consumer. And the ones that are holding back and not really telling us what's going on within your company, how are you doing your products, well, I think at some stage the consumer will send them the bill and say, sorry, not good enough. You need to be more transparent, and we need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, we're just simply not buying from you, right? So hopefully that's where we're going. And, the more power to the consumer, and the consumer wants a change, so the better.
Absolutely. So since it seems like most of that responsibility to put out these transparency reports is going to be falling on individual businesses, companies, and there isn't a regulating body kind of stepping in, is there anything that you think would prevent a company from greenwashing these reports or even omitting aspects of, say, their pollution or supply chains that would make them look better to a consumer?
Yeah, that's unfortunately always a risk, right? You're putting out their information, and obviously someone's gonna hold you accountable if you are giving the wrong information. I do think, as you mentioned, with more focus on catching greenwashing initiatives and things like that, more and more scrutiny is gonna come into these reports, and to make sure that the information that is provided is factual and true. And I think, having gone through the publication of ours, I know that our internal scrutiny has been massive, has been really, really strong to make sure that everything we're putting out there can be substantiated. It is true. It is according to our policies and to the beliefs. And we've had all the support as well from our mother company, VF, to make sure that what we're saying is the right thing. The information is factual and there is no greenwashing involved. It's all been substantiated and validated. The risk of someone making big claims in sustainability is there. You probably have seen it. A lot of people make big, bold, sustainable claims that then they perhaps cannot support. And that is a problem, obviously, because sustainability at the moment sells. And, some people maybe are not being as thorough as they should be. And it's a risk. It's definitely a big risk.
Yeah, it feels unavoidable, even if people are really trying to do the right thing. And you already kind of talked about the motivations for companies writing these transparency reports. And something that keeps coming up again and again in the conversation is how the consumers use this and perceive this within the transparency of the company. So beyond that consumer-facing benefit, are they used for anything else, like internal reflection or goal setting, things like that?
Yeah, for sure. So as you said, we primarily write this to inform the consumer, saying, hey guys, this is who we are, our heart on a page, so to say, for them to review it and also to perhaps criticize it. That's what comes to, and we will onboard any criticism because it makes us improve, right? On the other side, we write these reports also with a point of view of informing the industry of what is going on, from bodies that are looking to provide sustainability ratings to different companies. There is a number of those going around. So this report is sort of our answer and say, well, this is what we can say about the sustainability initiatives that are going on in Icebreaker. And also, we are trying to be open and letting even competitors know what we believe is the right way to do things. Like in this case with regenerative wool, when we started the ZQRX program, it was a joint effort between Allbirds, Smartwool, and ourselves. So we are trying to collaborate within the industry for better and putting out there what we believe is the right way of doing things. It's also to inspire our competitors to say, oh, well, we could perhaps be doing this as well. And therefore, at the end of the day, it's the planet that benefits, right? So long as we are cleaning up our home, the more people cleaning, the better.
Yeah, I love that collaboration piece. I think that is going to be really important moving forward, especially if you are in the business of creating things and using resources. So I guess going forward, this is the part that I am maybe most excited to hear about, is basically, how did you write this report? How was it all compiled, and how long did it actually take you to get all of that information?
Okay. So it was, as I said before, it's not an easy task. Reflecting on how we went about it, it's almost like we asked the whole company to audit themselves, right? It was a group of us driving the project, but we literally involved everyone in the brand, not only our brand, but also in VF, because we really needed to gather all the relevant information. And that's going through each single function within the company. And for instance, going to finance, say, hey, I need to understand the finance data for the last year, and they have to go and compile it. HR numbers, we also disclose about how many people we are, the gender split, and things like that. So yeah, it takes involving our whole company and us sort of gathering all that information and processing it and going, okay, this is how we're going to present it, right? And it's not only internal, but also external. So we worked very closely, for instance, with our partners at the New Zealand Merino company, which are the company that is managing the relationship with our growers. So they helped us a lot put together all the stories, and they are sort of the people on the ground there in the South Island of New Zealand, talking to the growers, getting all that information, doing the relevant interviews. And also, even further, we had to go to every single one of our suppliers within our supply chain to get updated information from them. And if you go back to the back of the report, there is like 4 or 5 pages of just suppliers. So we had to go to every single one of them and like, oh, give me your updated information, number of workers, migrant workers, all that stuff. So it took almost reaching out to everyone, collecting an insane amount of information, and then digesting it back to something that it's digestible by the consumer, that it doesn't become an absolute overload of information. So in terms of timing, I think it took 6 months, I want to say, since we started to do it.
Wow, that does sound like an extensive amount of work.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be kind of, in my mind, one of the bigger hurdles, especially for smaller companies, if they were trying to pursue writing one of these reports, is like the time and energy input into it. So if that was kind of someone's thought, what would you maybe tell them about the benefit versus the time that you have put into this project?
Yeah, I do think it's one of these, as we said before, it's almost like a hygiene factor, if you will, from now on. Like, companies need to be accountable for what they do. So it is effort and it is time, but I think the ages of doing business without understanding and controlling what you're doing and being able to report and show the consumer what you're doing, that's kind of dying, right? If you want to be relevant this day and age and be responsible and sustainable, you need to be able to somehow offer that transparency. So if it's maybe not a transparency report, there's other ways people are doing. They publish sort of live data perhaps in their website, like this is what we're doing today. This is, I don't know, it's just small snippets of information every now and then. It's also part of being transparent. So to me, it's worth the effort. I think that's the bottom line for Icebreaker. This is, for us, is the right thing to do, and we don't envision a different way of doing it. And, first time we did it, it was extremely difficult. Second time was a little bit easier. The 5th time, we kind of start to know how to do it. So it just, with a bit of practice at the end, it's not that much of a hurdle or that much of a problem.
Yeah, I could imagine that the first time you're collecting all of that initial data and you're not even exactly sure what you're evaluating and including. So then building off of it through the years would potentially be a lot easier. So that makes sense.
Correct.
So within that report, another thing that I am wondering is how it evaluates the current practices to reflect your future goals.
Right. So, as we said before, the report is about reporting what we did last year, and that's the reporting side of it, right? But we usually, in our reports, you take the opportunity to showcase what our goals are. So, in a sense, to make public and to make ourselves accountable and committed to the sustainability goals that we want to reach within in the following year. So, in a sense, setting up what we did, but also telling the consumer what we will do, so they know the road doesn't end up in this report. We continue the work, right? So, for instance, if in this report we have put out 4 ambitious goals, like one is about pioneering regenerative wool as part of the ZQRX program that I mentioned before, and then we're also committing to the use of regenerative and responsibly sourced fibers. So every wool and whatever is not wool as well, we are just going to move it all to responsible and renewable fibers, right? So, for instance, other things like tencel or so forth. And then if we look at bio-based alternatives, this has to always be enclosed in that responsible and renewable fibers. Then we're also showing the commitment to invest in repairing and rehoming our products. This is something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, give a second life to our products, and something that we're going to be working very hard in the next months. And as a supply chain initiative, we are working into implementing renewable energy and water efficiency practices to all our supply partners. So this is a work that is happening at the factory level that we are now really honing hard into it and making sure that we can get the results that we need.
Yeah. I mean, how close do you think at Icebreaker you are to, I guess, reaching 100% being regenerative, or even 100%, I guess you could call it circular, like a circular system, you know, if you're doing that repairing and repurposing or like rehoming, as well as cutting out all of the petrol materials?
So I think we're pretty close to cutting out all the petrol materials. So we're at 95% of all the fiber that we buy. If you were to put it in a warehouse, 100% of our fiber sitting in a warehouse, 95% of that will be solely natural fibers or plant-based fibers. This is what we would call things like tencel. And only 5% of it's now still petrochemical. So having in mind what our pipeline we have in the works, we are doing extremely good progress towards getting closer to do that, to removing completely the petrochemical. In terms of rehoming and repairing, we're starting now, right? So we're gonna start with a pilot, and we're gonna start to roll it out more and more once we have that system dial. We want to make sure that whatever we do is impactful and it's sustainable as well. That we can keep doing it for the years to come. Yeah, and regenerative is gonna keep growing. We have now 70 of our growers, 100% of our long-term contracted growers are in ZQRX. Once we are ready to communicate what the impact of that in carbon levels is, we will. And it's something that is very much in the works and happening as we speak. So yeah, I think the progress is quite good and strong.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like you have a lot of really great things going and a lot of really amazing products that already are on the market. Sounds like you are going to continue to improve them over time. So how can listeners find the transparency report and learn more about the sustainable practices that Icebreaker embodies?
So the transparency report lives in our home website. So the way I do it always, I go in the search engine of icebreaker.com and I write transparency report, and it just takes you straight there. And then there you'll find not only this year's report, but the other 4 reports that we've written in the past. So from there, there's also in that landing page, there's some really nice videos that sort of tells the story about regenerative with the voice of the growers. It's a very sort of approachable way to understand what regenerative means to the farmers, to the people that are actually doing the work, doing the change. So yeah, hopefully people enjoys that website and the videos. I think they're amazing. So
yeah, I'll be sure to include links to all of that, including this year's transparency report, in the show notes, so you can also find it there. And I do just want to say that looking at the transparency report, it is very aesthetically pleasing and easy to read through, almost kind of like a magazine. And like you were saying, it does kind of tell a story, which I think as a consumer is kind of fun. And it made it more of like an intimate experience, I guess, because like you mentioned, you do get to hear from the voice of the growers, which I think doesn't always happen. You're usually just hearing from the voice of the brand. So it made it seem, just a lot more intimate, and I really liked it.
Great. I'll let the guys know. They'll be super happy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time for being here.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can still find me on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book for daily updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with a shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.